Drew told me over dinner, very casually, as if he were commenting on the weather. I invited Monica to the wedding. If you love me, you'd understand. I stared at him, the candle between us, flickering just enough to throw shadows across his face. My pulse thudded in my ears. For a second, I actually wondered if I'd misheard him. But no, he said it with the same steady tone he used when choosing napkin colors or deciding which appetizers to serve. Calm, certain, unshakably confident that I would accept whatever he said simply because he said it. Monica, his ex. Not just some old high school fling, no. Monica was the woman he dated through all 4 years of college. The one he almost proposed to. The one he once described as the person who taught me what love was supposed to feel like. The person whose name he never said without a softness slipping into his voice, a softness I had tried for years not to resent. I felt my fork go still in my hand. You invited your ex to our wedding? I asked, my voice too even, too calm for the way my stomach had just twisted into a knot. Drew smiled, an easy, practiced smile I suddenly realized I didn't recognize anymore. Yeah, we're still friends. It would be weird not to invite her. Weird. Weird was your fiancé wanting his ex, now married, to come watch him say vows to another woman. But I didn't say that. I just searched his face, waiting for him to show even a flicker of awareness that this was abnormal. Instead, he added, her husband Ron can't make it. Business trip overseas, but Monica will be there. It's mature, Jess. We're adults. Adults, right. Adults apparently invite the biggest question mark of their romantic past to the most intimate day of their future. A cold, heavy feeling settled in my chest, an instinct whispering that something here was very, very wrong. His tone was too smooth, his explanation too quick, and the way he said Ron's overseas felt rehearsed. Still, I swallowed the unease and forced a nod because I needed more than instinct to confront him. I needed truth. And I had no idea that the truth would burn hotter than anything I was prepared to face. If someone had told me 3 years ago that I'd one day sit across from Drew while he announced he was inviting his ex to our wedding, I would have laughed. Drew wasn't the kind of man you ever expected chaos from. He was steady, predictable in the comforting way. The kind of man who double-checks the locks twice, keeps every receipt, and remembers the exact date of every milestone we ever hit. I met him during a late-night grocery run. A moment so ordinary, it felt like fate dressed in sweatpants. I was in the aisle staring at 2 brands of granola, exhausted after a 12-hour shift, and he walked up beside me, holding the exact same 2 bags. He joked, "Looks like we're both having an existential crisis over oats," and I laughed harder than I should have. It was easy with him, effortless, safe. Our first date was coffee. Our second was a walk by the river. By the third, he'd already told me about Monica. Only brief pieces then, small stories told casually, the way you mention old teachers or childhood pets. She was part of his past, not a threat, not a shadow. Or at least that's what I believed. He was good to me, thoughtful in quiet, intentional ways. When my job overwhelmed me, he'd show up with takeout and a blanket. When I lost my grandmother, he held me through the entire funeral. When I got sick with the flu, he cleaned my entire apartment without saying a word. He made me feel chosen, cherished. 8 months ago, when he proposed at the Botanical Gardens, kneeling beside a fountain surrounded by white lights, I genuinely thought I was the luckiest woman alive. I didn't even look at the ring before saying yes. The moment felt too big for material things. Planning the wedding together felt natural. We picked our venue, Riverside Manor, after touring half the city. Drew loved the high ceilings. I loved the river view. 150 guests, a string quartet, a menu we both pretended wasn't overpriced. It was all coming together, piece by perfect piece. But looking back now, the cracks had been there long before Monica's name resurfaced. Little moments, like the way he'd sometimes go quiet when relationships came up in conversation, lost in a thought he never shared. Or how he always skipped certain songs on the radio, songs I later learned were tied to memories with her. Or how once, when we passed near his old college campus, he tensed ever so slightly, staring out the window as though remembering someone, not something. He never mentioned Monica much, not enough to alarm me, but just enough to remind me she existed, like a faint echo in a room I thought I'd claimed. I brushed it off. Everyone has a past. Everyone has someone they loved before, and Drew wasn't dramatic or unpredictable. He was stable. He wasn't the type to stir trouble. Or so I believed then. Even when I first noticed him guarding his phone a bit more than usual, I chalked it up to work stress. When he said he needed more late nights at the office, I assumed deadlines were tight. I never thought to question him. Not deeply, not seriously. Because trust, to me, wasn't just a word. It was a commitment. And I had committed to him long before we booked the venue. Now, sitting here replaying every memory, every pause, every tiny shift in his expression, I realize something painful. Sometimes you don't miss the red flags. Sometimes you just convince yourself they're decorations. And I had decorated our entire future around him. The night Drew told me he invited Monica to the wedding, a quiet alarm started ringing somewhere deep in my chest. Not loud enough to act on, but steady enough that I felt it with every breath. Something didn't add up. His tone, his explanation, the effortless confidence he had that I'd just accept it. But love makes you rationalize things you shouldn't. Still, the next few days were littered with moments that scraped against my nerves like static. 2 mornings later, I woke before Drew. His phone buzzed on the nightstand, screen lighting up in the dark room. A message preview flashed. Just a name. Monica. I didn't open it. I didn't touch his phone. But I stared at the light until it faded, feeling something sharp twist inside my ribcage. When he woke up and saw me looking at the phone, he turned it over instantly, face down. I have a presentation today, he mumbled, already standing, already creating distance. Don't want to get distracted. His voice was clipped, not angry, guarded. I told myself I was imagining it. Later that week, while confirming seating arrangements, Drew said casually, I'm thinking of putting Monica at table 3. I froze. Table 3? I asked, trying to sound neutral. Isn't that close to us? He shrugged. She won't know many people. It'd be awkward to seat her with strangers. I sifted through the guest list in my mind. What about table 7? Your cousins will be there. His jaw tightened, a tiny flicker he probably didn't realize I noticed. No, table 3 makes more sense. The way he said it. The way he almost said something else before stopping himself. Too close to what? Too far from whom? Another little alarm bell rang in my chest, louder this time. But the moment everything snapped into focus came 2 nights later. Drew left his iPad on my couch. He never left his devices behind. He guarded them like they were made of glass. I wasn't planning to touch it. I swear I wasn't. But when I picked it up to move it, the screen lit up without a passcode. Messages automatically synced. His and hers. My heart thudded painfully. I shouldn't look, I knew that. But the same way you can't help but look at an approaching storm, my eyes drifted. And there it was. Weeks of messages between Drew and Monica. Not flirtatious in a blatant way. No sexting. No, I miss you. But too friendly, too familiar, too reminiscent. Shared memories, inside jokes, little phrases like, remember when? And him saying things like, shame it didn't work out between us. Her replying, timing is everything. A cold wave rolled through me, numbing and electric at once. I scrolled just enough to feel sick, not enough to betray myself completely. When I set the iPad down, my hands were shaking. This wasn't just nostalgia, this wasn't harmless friendship. This was a connection rekindling in the shadows, right under my nose. And suddenly, Drew's eagerness to have her at the wedding, the rushed explanation about Trevor being overseas, the seating arrangement, the defensiveness. Everything aligned into a shape I didn't want to see. But once you see a pattern, you cannot unsee it. I realized then that Drew wasn't just inviting his ex to our wedding out of maturity. He was inviting unfinished feelings. And something deep inside me whispered that the truth was far messier and far closer than I wanted to believe. Finding those messages should have been the breaking point, but heartbreak rarely works on logic. I didn't scream. I didn't confront Drew when he came over later that night, kissing my forehead like nothing was wrong. Instead, I watched him move around my kitchen, listened to him talk about work, and tried to reconcile the man, slicing vegetables for dinner, with the man telling his ex that timing is everything. But a realization had settled in me like cold steel. If I wanted answers, Drew would never give them to me, but someone else might. On Saturday morning, sitting cross-legged on my couch with the iPad beside me like a radioactive object, I made a decision that shifted everything. I searched for Monica online. She was easy to find. Social media full of bright pictures and curated smiles. A dental hygienist, marathon runner. Her posts were clean, consistent, carefully filtered. If I didn't know she was the woman Drew once loved, I would have thought she was harmless. Her husband Ron appeared in several photos, tall, broad-shouldered, smiling. They looked like a stable couple, happy. But I knew how photos lie. I stared at his profile picture for a long minute, my thumb hovering over the message button. I'd never contacted the husband of my partner's ex before. It felt intrusive, messy, petty even. But nothing about this was petty. This wasn't jealousy. This was survival. Finally, I exhaled and typed, "Hi, Ron, you don't know me, but I'm marrying Drew next month. He told me he's invited you two to our wedding. He also said you, Ron, couldn't attend because you're overseas, but I see your posts are local. I wanted to personally extend an invitation for you and Monica. The rehearsal dinner is at Riverside Manor on the 15th. Just thought you should know. Jessica." It was polite, calm, neutral, but every word carried a small, sharpened truth. I hit send. I wasn't expecting a reply so quickly, but 10 minutes later, my phone buzzed. "Overseas? That's interesting since I'm sitting in my office right now. Moreover, my name is not Ron. I'm Trevor." My breath caught. "Monica told me she had a work conference that weekend. Thank you for reaching out. I'll definitely be attending." I stared at the message for a long time, heartbeat drumming in my throat. So Drew lied to me, and Monica lied to Trevor. Two people in two relationships, hiding the same person behind the same fabricated excuses. This wasn't coincidence. This was coordination, or at least a shared secret. And I was done being the one in the dark. Trevor and I exchanged more messages that evening. Cautious at first, then quickly aligned like two people who'd both been holding their breath for months. He confessed things I recognized instantly. Monica guarding his phone, working late out of nowhere, suddenly obsessed with fitness. Classic signs, he'd typed. He didn't have proof, he said, but he had suspicion. And suspicion is all a wounded instinct needs to sharpen into certainty. When I told her, gently, that I had seen messages, not explicit ones, but intimate in their familiarity. Trevor didn't explode or fall apart. He turned ice cold. They deserve each other. Then, let's give them what they're asking for. A chill ran up my spine, not fear, clarity. Together, quietly, deliberately, we made a plan. Trevor would come to the rehearsal dinner as my guest. Not the wedding. Too loud, too chaotic, too messy. The rehearsal dinner was perfect. Intimate, unavoidable, devastatingly precise. Maximum impact, minimum chaos, truth delivered clean and sharp. 3 days before the rehearsal dinner, Drew was reviewing the guest list with me. His voice was light, comfortable, as if nothing simmered beneath the surface. "It's just family and the wedding party, right?" I asked. "Yeah," he said, flipping the page. "And Monica, I invited her to the rehearsal dinner, too." I almost laughed, not from humor, from the sheer audacity. "Why?" I asked softly. "She's traveling from out of state," he lied again. Thought it would be nice. Traveling from out of state, she lived 45 minutes away. "That's very thoughtful of you," I said, and he smiled, completely missing the edge in my voice. The truth was already unavoidable. Now I was simply walking it toward him. The day of the rehearsal dinner, I told Drew I had to pick up a friend stranded with car trouble. He frowned. "Now? Dinner's in 2 hours." "I'll be quick," I said, kissing his cheek. "He really needs help." He didn't ask who. He didn't question it. That alone told me enough. I drove to meet Trevor. He stepped out of his car looking composed, wearing an expensive suit that suddenly seemed out of place for what was about to unfold. His expression was hard, unreadable, but there was an edge of discomfort in the way he shifted his weight from one foot to the other. Trevor adjusted his cufflinks, taking a deep breath before answering. 3 years of marriage, he said, his voice steady but laced with frustration. "And now she's pulling this, sneaking around behind my back with her ex." I nodded, feeling the weight of his words. "You ready?" I asked, my voice calm, even though my stomach was tied in knots. "Oh, I'm ready," he said, his tone flat. "Let's go give them what they're asking for." And together, we headed to the dinner that would unravel everything Drew had been trying to hide. The drive to the rehearsal dinner felt unreal, like the world had thickened around me, every sound slightly muffled, every light too bright. Trevor sat beside me, calm in a way that only someone who had shifted from heartbreak to purpose could be. His hands were steady, mine were not. "You don't have to do this," I said quietly as we waited at a red light. He let out a soft, humorless laugh. "Jessica, I've spent months wondering if I'm crazy. Tonight I get clarity, and he gets consequences." The light turned green. We arrived 40 minutes late. on purpose. When I stepped out of the car, my knees felt strange, like they weren't fully connected to the rest of my body. But as soon as Trevor fell into step beside me, something inside me aligned. I wasn't alone in this anymore. We walked toward the private dining room, voices rising behind the door, laughter, silverware clinking, the comfort of families who thought tonight was a celebration. My heart pounded against my ribs. "Ready?" Trevor murmured. I nodded, then opened the door. Conversation died instantly. There were about 30 people in the room. Our families, bridesmaids, groomsmen. And at the main table, sitting right beside Drew, leaning in far too comfortably, Trevor's husband, Monica. Drew looked up, irritation on his face at our lateness, an irritation that froze into confusion, then panic when Trevor stepped in behind me. It was like watching a slow-motion explosion. Monica's entire face drained of color, actual white. Her napkin slipped from her hand. Drew's mouth opened just slightly, not enough to be obvious, but enough for me to feel the tremor of the lie she'd been gripping finally starting to crack. Trevor smiled sweetly at Monica. "Hi, honey. Surprise. My trip got canceled." A collective inhale swept through the room. Drew stood abruptly. "Jessica, what's going on?" I stepped forward, my voice calm in the way only deeply justified anger can be. "Everyone, this is Trevor, Monica's husband. He'll be joining us tonight as my guest." My mother, bless her intuition, immediately understood. She stood and said warmly, "Trevor, darling, come sit by me." We took our seats. Monica and Drew sat stiff and silent across from us. Looked like someone had swapped the oxygen in the room for smoke. I folded my napkin neatly, hands steady now, finally steady. Dinner resumed in the loosest sense of the word. The air vibrated with tension so sharp you could almost hear it humming. After a few strained minutes, Drew's voice cracked the silence. "So, Ron," he said, pretending normalcy, "how long have you and Trevor been married?" Trevor took a sip of wine. 3 years, he said lightly. Then he glanced at Drew, then at Monica. Though, apparently, I should be asking Jessica how long you two have been texting behind my back. A fork clattered. Someone coughed. Drew went rigid. "Trevor, don't..." "Don't what?" Trevor asked, his smile sharp. "Don't mention the midnight messages, or the gym selfies, or the memories you two keep reminiscing about?" Monica flinched as if hit. Drew turned to me. "Jess, it's not what you think." "Is it not?" I asked softly. "Then why did you lie to me about Trevor being overseas?" His mouth opened, closed. I wasn't lying, I just..." "Got the name wrong, too," Trevor added. "You told Jessica my name was Ron. That's cute. I didn't know I'd changed it." Gasps rippled across the table. Drew's parents stared at him like he'd sprouted horns. My chest tightened, not from pain anymore, but from clarity. He had crafted an entire scaffolding of lies around this woman and invited me to stand under it with him. Monica finally spoke, voice weak. "Trevor, please, not here." Trevor laughed. "Oh, sweetheart, if not here, then where? At your fake work conference?" Even my brother whispered, not quietly enough, "Holy hell." Drew rubbed his forehead. "Jess, please, let's talk privately." "No," I said. "You made this public the moment you invited Monica to our wedding. I'm simply returning the courtesy." Silence again. Then Monica muttered, "We're leaving." Trevor didn't even look at her. "No, honey, you're leaving. I'm enjoying my dinner." He lifted his wine glass. "The salmon's excellent." My mother raised her glass too, to honesty in relationships. Half the room drank, half sat frozen. I watched Drew's face fall inch by inch. Panic, shame, fear. But beneath it all, something else, a flash of regret, because he finally understood that I hadn't shown up unprepared. For the first time, the power shifted, and I felt it settle over me like armor. By the time dessert arrived, Drew wasn't speaking. Monica had fled. Trevor and I had become an unlikely alliance, and his entire family was staring at him with a mixture of confusion, betrayal, and dawning realization. And Drew finally whispered, barely audible, "Jessica, what have you done?" I looked him in the eye. "Nothing," I said. "I just turned on the lights." The rehearsal dinner hadn't simply gone badly. It had detonated, sending shockwaves through every person in that room. But the true fallout, the part where families collide, secrets bleed into daylight, and the thin fabric of politeness tears apart, was only beginning. When Monica slunk out, face pale and lips tight, she didn't look at Trevor. She didn't look at me. But she did look at Drew. A split-second glance. An entire confession packed into one flicker. And then she was gone. The door hadn't even closed before Drew's mother leaned forward, her pearls clinking against her glass. "Drew," she said, voice trembling, "is there something you want to tell us?" Drew didn't answer. He stared at his plate like he wanted to sink into it. Jessica, my name, spoken sharply, snapped my attention across the table. Drew's father, a stern man with the emotional elasticity of concrete, was glaring at me. "What exactly is going on here?" he demanded. Before I could speak, Trevor lifted her chin. "Your son," he said, voice calm and lethal, "has been having an emotional affair with my wife." A ripple of gasps swept through the room. Drew's father turned to him. "Is this true?" "No," Drew said too quickly. Trevor tilted his head. "Should I read the messages? The ones about timing and remember when and midnight nostalgia sessions?" He glanced at me. "Or the gym selfies? Because I have screenshots." Drew's mother's hand flew to her mouth. "Friends talk," Drew muttered weakly. It wasn't like that." I finally spoke. "It was enough like that for you to lie to me. Repeatedly." Drew's head snapped toward me. "Jess, I didn't lie. You told me Monica's husband was named Ron," I cut in. "You told me he was overseas. You told me you and Monica were just friends." Drew's face crumpled. He opened his mouth again, but no words came out. Silence spilled into the room like oil. Then came the chaos. Drew's sister Erin slammed her napkin down. "Oh my God, Drew, seriously? After everything Jessica has done for you?" Drew sputtered. "Erin, stay out of it." "No," Erin shot back. "You're about to marry her, and you've been circling back to Monica? Are you out of your mind?" Drew's mother whispered, "I thought you were past this." That one sentence told me more than any text message could have. Past this. So this had happened before. A wave of nausea rolled through me. "Drew," I asked softly, "is she right?" His jaw clenched. I don't want to talk about this here." Trevor scoffed. "Oh, you'll talk here. You wanted all the key players present, didn't you?" Drew shot him a glare, but he couldn't deny it. He'd engineered this whole twisted pre-wedding tableau, inviting Monica, lying about Trevor, placing her close to the head table. But he never expected the table to turn. Then his dad stood abruptly, knocking his chair backward. "You were going to bring your ex to your wedding," he said, voice rising. "And not just bring her, you planned to seat her right beside us. Why, Drew? Why?" Drew's voice cracked. I just needed closure." Closure. A cold, bitter laugh escaped my throat before I could stop it. "Closure?" I repeated. "At our wedding?" Drew reached for my hand, pleading. "Jess, please." I pulled it away. Trevor watched him, eyes glinting. "Closure is one thing. Sneaking around with my wife behind my back is another." "You don't know that," Drew snapped at her. "Nothing happened." "Oh?" Trevor slipped his phone from his pocket. "You want me to read them out loud? The ones about the weekend in wine country? The ones dated 2 months ago, when she told me she was at a work retreat?" Gasps erupted. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." Drew looked at him in horror. "You weren't supposed to—" "To what?" Trevior cut him off. "Find out? Of course not. Cheaters rarely plan for accountability." He slumped back in his chair. Finally, Drew's father turned to me. "Jessica," he said quietly, "I'm so sorry. You didn't deserve this." I stared at Drew's father, this man who had never really warmed to me in 3 years, and in his eyes I saw something that surprised me. Respect. But Drew, he looked shattered, cornered, small, and still unbelievably defiant. "Jess," he whispered, "you ambushed me." I met his gaze without blinking. "No," I said. "I gave you the honesty you refused to give me." His mouth opened, then closed. His eyes filled with something like desperation. And that's when he finally broke. "Fine," he shouted, slamming his hand on the table. "Yes, I wanted Monica at the wedding. Yes, I still had feelings I needed to sort out. I needed to know if I was making the right choice. Happy now?" His voice echoed through the room. Drew's mother burst into tears. His father turned away, shaking his head. Erin whispered, "You idiot." Monica watched, arms crossed, victorious but grieving. And I felt something inside me go quiet. Not broken, not bleeding, just quiet. The kind of quiet that only comes after a truth so big it rearranges your entire world. "So," I said softly, "my wedding was just a test for you." Drew stared at me, helpless. I stood slowly, feeling every eye in the room on me. "Then allow me," I said, "to give you your results." I reached into my purse and pulled out the envelope. Crisp, heavy, final. His father's brows knit. "What's that?" "The invoice," I said, "for all the wedding deposits. $18,000, paid in full." Drew blinked in confusion. Why, why are you giving me that?" "Because," I said calmly, "the wedding is off." A collective breath swept through the room. "You can use everything I've already paid for," I added, "for your next wedding, maybe to Monica." Monica let out a soft, viciously amused exhale. Drew's father's face drained of color. "You paid all the deposits?" "Every penny," I said. "Your son wanted the expensive packages." Drew shook his head slowly, disbelief and fear mingling in his eyes. "Jess," he whispered, "please don't do this." But I already had, and for the first time in months, I felt the ground beneath me return. The rehearsal dinner didn't just end a relationship, it ended the version of me who tolerated uncertainty, secrets, and half-truths disguised as love. And as I walked out, Monica beside me, Drew's family in stunned silence behind us, I realized something vital. Sometimes you don't lose a partner, you lose a parasite. The escalation was over. The reckoning had just begun. When I walked out of the rehearsal dinner, a strange mixture of numbness and clarity moved through me. It wasn't triumph, it wasn't satisfaction, it was the heavy, hollow quiet that comes after ripping away the final illusion protecting you from the truth. I didn't cry that night, not when I got home, not when I hung up the dress I'd planned to wear for our engagement photos the next morning, not when I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the ring Drew had slipped onto my finger 8 months earlier. It should have hurt more, but the pain was dulled by something sharper, the realization that the man I loved had used our wedding, not to celebrate a future, but to weigh me against the ghost of a woman he never let go of. And somehow, that betrayal felt quieter than I expected, like a bruise beneath the skin that hadn't yet risen. The next day, Drew showed up at my apartment unannounced. Not knocking, pounding. "Jessica, open the door, please." I stayed still on my couch, breath held, palms damp. He pounded again. "Jess, come on, we need to talk." We had talked, in front of his entire family, in front of his ex's husband, in front of the woman he'd been emotionally circling back toward. But somehow, Drew always believed the real conversation was the one where he got the last word. I finally opened the door. He looked wrecked, hair disheveled, eyes swollen, shirt wrinkled. But beneath all of that was the same thing that had always scared me more than anger, entitlement. "Jess," he said, stepping inside before I could stop him, "you blindsided me." I almost laughed. Blindsided? He'd been planning to bring his ex to our wedding and seat her 3 tables away from us. He'd been lying for weeks, but I blindsided him. I folded my arms. "You need to leave." He shook his head. "Not until we talk." "Then talk," I said. He ran a hand through his hair. "I made a mistake, a stupid one, but it wasn't what you think." I stared at him. "You admitted you invited Monica because you still had unresolved feelings." "That's not—" He stopped. His jaw tightened. "Okay, yes, I needed closure. Closure doesn't require late-night messages or lying about her husband's location." He winced. "I panicked, okay? I knew it would upset you." "So you lied." He flinched at the word. "Good. He should." "Jess," he whispered, stepping closer, "I love you. I choose you." I stepped back. "You only chose me after Monica's husband showed up and your parents started watching you like you were a stranger." "That's not fair," he said, voice cracking. "It's accurate." Then something in him snapped. "You went through my messages." My eyebrows lifted. "You left your iPad on my couch. It opened on its own." "That's still a violation." "A violation?" I echoed, incredulous. "You were planning to use our wedding ceremony to decide whether to marry me or run after another woman." Drew's face paled. "I wasn't— Jess, that's not— Monica twisted things." I cut him off. "Stop. Stop blaming Monica. Stop blaming me. Stop blaming everyone except the person who made these choices." He looked at me, breathing hard. "So what?" he finally whispered. "You're really calling off the wedding?" "I already did last night." His face fell. "Jessica, don't do this. You can't throw away 3 years over one mistake." I held his gaze. "No, Drew, you threw away 3 years. I'm just cleaning up your mess." He swallowed. "I can fix this." "You can't fix something you never respected." For a moment, he looked stunned, like no one had ever spoken to him that way. But entitlement has a way of resurrecting itself. He took another step forward. "Jess, you're emotional. You're reacting instead of thinking. You're over—" "Do not finish that sentence." He froze. And in the silence, the final fracture happened. I realized I didn't fear losing him. I feared losing myself if I stayed. When he finally left, after another 10 minutes of pleading, bargaining, looping through denial and anger, I locked the door behind him and pressed my back to the wood. That was when the tears finally came. Not the sobbing kind, those would come days later, but the silent ones, the ones that carry grief and humiliation and relief all tangled together. The ring felt heavy on my finger. Slowly, deliberately, I slipped it off, placed it on the kitchen counter, and stood there, hands trembling, staring at the evidence of a future that had crumbled under the weight of one man's cowardice. This wasn't the end of the story. It was just the darkest part, the place where hope collapses and something new begins, even if you can't see it yet. In the days after the rehearsal dinner, everything around me felt suspended, like the air itself was waiting for the next crack to form. I thought Drew would retreat, reflect, maybe even apologize with some semblance of sincerity, but people rarely behave the way you hope after their deceptions are exposed. Instead of remorse, he reached for control. It started with silence, long stretches of it, until suddenly the silence exploded. The burst came in the form of a social media post, a long, dramatic paragraph written over a soft-filtered photo of him looking devastated, chin tilted slightly like a heartbroken movie protagonist. In it, he painted himself as an innocent man ambushed by a fiancé who misinterpreted harmless friendship and humiliated him publicly for no reason. He said he had been committed, that he had hoped for a peaceful wedding, but that I had chosen cruelty over communication. He tagged mutual friends. He tagged his family. He tagged people I barely knew. For a moment, I just stared at my screen, feeling the familiar pinch of betrayal. Sharp, quick, humiliating. My throat tightened. He wasn't trying to fix anything. He was trying to rewrite history while the ink was still wet. Then a new notification appeared. Trevor commented, "Innocent friendship? Is that why you told Jessica I was overseas while planning to sit my wife near the head table? Should I post the screenshots?" The thread went silent. Several people who had rushed to comfort Drew quietly deleted their earlier sympathy. No one posted another word. But Trevor wasn't finished. He posted a cropped message. Trevor's. "Remember that weekend in wine country?" His caption. 2 months ago, when I was home, and when she told her friends she was at a work retreat. The ground shifted. Drew's curated narrative cracked down the center. And for the first time since the dinner, I felt the smallest breath of relief. That afternoon, Drew's mother called. Her voice was tense, brittle. "Jessica, this is humiliating for all of us." "I didn't make any of this public," I replied. Drew did. A long pause. Then, in a smaller voice, "He shouldn't have invited her, or lied. We're processing." Processing. A pleasant word for watching their perfect son unravel. Before I could respond, she whispered, "I'm sorry this is happening." It was the first honest thing she had ever said to me. Later that evening, I received a message from Erin, Drew's sister. "He's telling people you overreacted. I don't believe him. Mom and Dad don't either. Just wanted you to know." I thanked her. The kindness stung more than the betrayal. But the real shift, the moment everything rearranged in my mind, came when Monica messaged me again. She sent a photo of a second phone she had found hidden in Trevor's car. A burner phone, not password protected, full of messages. Not just the ones between her husband and Drew. Those were bad enough. But the ones between Monica and Drew. And the worst of them wasn't even a message. It was a drafted email. A single subject line. "If anyone objects." My blood ran cold. Monica sent a screenshot of the draft. It wasn't long, but it didn't need to be. Drew had written, "If you give me the signal during the ceremony, I'll stand. We can leave together." Monica's reply from weeks earlier showed beneath it. "Let me see how I feel in the moment." I pressed a hand to my mouth, breath trembling. He wasn't torn. He wasn't confused. He wasn't emotional or overwhelmed. He was planning. He had intended to stand at the altar in front of my family, our friends, and the officiant, holding my hands, looking into my eyes, while waiting for a sign from another woman to decide whether or not to marry me. My wedding hadn't been a commitment to him. It had been a coin toss. All the late-night messages, all the lies about Trevor being overseas, all the defensiveness, all the secrecy, all the hesitation, all the tension in his jaw when I asked simple questions. It all fell into place with one sickening click. I wasn't the fallback. I was the placeholder. The truth hit so hard it knocked the breath from my lungs. I sank onto my kitchen floor, phone still in my hand, staring at that single sentence on the screen. "We can leave together." A sentence that was supposed to be whispered in fiction, not drafted for my wedding day. My hands shook, but my heart was suddenly steady. For the first time since everything began, I felt the shift inside me. A clean, sharp break from the past, a turning of a page I didn't know I'd been holding open. Everything that had felt tangled before suddenly came into focus. I didn't lose Drew at the rehearsal dinner. I lost him long before that. What I gained now, in this moment, on the cold tile floor, with Monica's message glowing in my hand, was myself. The fallout began quietly, too quietly, the kind of eerie calm that comes right after a building collapses, but before the dust finally settles. After the screenshot of the draft email, the one where Drew planned to follow Monica out of our own wedding, there wasn't much left for me to wonder about. The picture was complete. All that remained was the aftermath. 3 days before what would have been the wedding, Drew's father called. "Jessica," he said, solemn. "I need the vendor contacts." My fingers tightened around the phone. "Why?" "Jessica wants to cancel everything formally," he said. "We will reimburse you for the deposits. All $18,000. There was a tremor in his voice. Anger, embarrassment, exhaustion. A father finally seeing the son he raised for who he really was. I sent the itemized list within the hour. 48 hours later, a check arrived at my door. A final severance package from a family who wished they'd known the truth sooner. Meanwhile, Trevor's world was shifting just as violently. He told me Monica had been acting strange, but that word no longer covered it. When he went through the burner phone more thoroughly, he found exactly what he suspected: hotel receipts, dinner reservations for two, photos from gym sessions, excuses layered over excuses like a stack of wet paper. Monica had been sneaking around for months. She wasn't clever, she wasn't careful, and she certainly wasn't remorseful. What finally broke their marriage open was a single notification from a hotel chain she didn't normally use, sent to her shared email with him. He confronted him. She crumbled. The truth spilled out in fragments he couldn't control. He told her he wanted a divorce. She begged. He refused. And just like that, the two people who had brought so much chaos into our lives met the consequences of their own dishonesty. 1 week before the intended wedding date, Drew finally reached out again. Not with an apology, not with accountability, with desperation. He showed up outside my apartment building, calling my name like we were in some romantic drama instead of the aftermath of his betrayal. I stayed behind the locked lobby door. "Jessica!" he shouted, hair damp from the heat, face unshaven. "We can still fix this." "There's nothing left to fix," I said through the glass. "I choose you," he cried. "You don't get to choose me now," I replied. His face twisted. "Monica's lying about some of the messages. She twisted things." "She didn't write the emails you drafted," I said. "She didn't invent the midnight conversations. She didn't fabricate the lies about Trevor. That was you." His shoulders slumped. For the first time, I think he understood the door he'd closed. "I loved you," he whispered. "I believe you did," I said softly. "Just not enough to let go of her." He flinched, stepped back, and quietly walked away. It was the last time we spoke. The day that should have been my wedding arrived like a ghost. Familiar, quiet, almost polite in its haunting. My bridesmaids texted. My mother called 3 times. My dress hung untouched in my closet, wrapped in plastic like a preserved relic from a life I no longer belonged to. Instead of falling apart, I made a different choice. I woke early, showered, dressed, and took myself to the cafe where Drew and I first met. I sat at a corner table with a croissant and coffee, letting the morning sun warm my face. There was grief. There was hurt. But beneath it all was a steady pulse of relief. I wasn't crying in a wedding dress. I wasn't waiting for a man who had been waiting for someone else. I wasn't sharing a life with a ticking bomb. I was free. Around noon, Aaron sent me a photo. It was Drew's social media again, but this time he had taken it in an entirely different direction. There he was, standing alone at the venue in what would have been his wedding suit, looking heartbreakingly self-centered. The caption read, "The wedding that should have been." He'd actually gone to Riverside Manor with no wedding, no bride, no guests, just his regrets and an inflated sense of tragedy. But the comments section wasn't what he expected. "Didn't you cheat? Didn't you invite your ex? Stop embarrassing yourself. Therapy." And then under all that, Monica commented, "Same suit you were planning to wear while deciding between your fiancé and me. Classy." Drew deleted the post within the hour. By the next morning, all his accounts were private. 3 months passed. The final outcomes unfolded like dominoes falling into place. Trevor thriving. He finalized his divorce, kept the house, and even kept the boat Monica adored. He sent me a picture of him holding the keys, sunlight hitting her smile. He looked alive again. Monica miserable, lost the house, half her 401k, now living in a cramped studio apartment. Monica said he waved at her when he saw her drive by. She didn't smile back. Drew living with his parents. barely posts anything. When he does, the captions are cryptic quotes about betrayal and learning who your real friends are. No one engages. Me. In a cooking class in Florence, I met someone, Adam. We didn't force anything. We just laughed together. He was the first person I told the story to who laughed until he cried. Somehow, telling him made the weight finally slide off my chest. I was lighter, stronger, whole. It took months to understand the truth. I hadn't survived a breakup. I had escaped a disaster. Sometime after fall settled over the city, I found myself sitting on a park bench, legs crossed, watching leaves drift in quiet spirals across the pavement. I hadn't planned to come here. It just happened. The way places connected to old versions of ourselves tend to pull us back when we're finally ready to understand them. For the first time in months, I wasn't replaying conversations or questioning timelines. I was simply breathing. My phone buzzed. A message preview appeared from a familiar number. I heard you're dating someone. I hope you're happy. Drew. I didn't open it. Not out of anger. Anger dissolves eventually, leaving something far clearer behind. I didn't open it because nothing inside that message could change who he had been or who I had become since walking away. Across the park, someone laughed. Deep, warm, easy. It reminded me of Adam, the man I met by accident in a cooking class in Florence. He had flour on his sleeves, a crooked smile, and the kind of humor that sneaks past your defenses before you realize you're smiling back. When I told him my story, hesitantly, expecting pity, he didn't offer cliches or condolences. He laughed until tears formed, then said, "You walked out of a burning building like it was a Sunday stroll." It was the first time the whole mess felt survivable, even slightly absurd. And for the first time, I felt the weight shift off my shoulders instead of sinking deeper into them. Leaving Drew didn't feel like losing a partner. It felt like stepping out of a life that had been shrinking around me without my noticing. I started waking earlier, cooking more, sleeping better. My apartment stopped feeling quiet in the wrong ways and started feeling peaceful in the right ones. I planted small routines, morning walks, new recipes, weekend calls with friends I'd unintentionally drifted from. The future stopped feeling like something I had to brace for. It started feeling like something I was allowed to walk toward. And somewhere in that stillness, in that openness, I finally understood the lesson I should have learned sooner. When someone shows you who they are, believe them. And when they invite their ex to your wedding, believe them immediately. The truth has a way of arriving, sometimes as whispers, sometimes as explosions. The rehearsal dinner venue still keeps a photo of that night in their security office labeled "The Dinner from Hell." Apparently they use it for staff training. I suppose will be unforgettable for years to come. But that's no longer my story to carry. My story is the one I chose the moment I let go. The one where I walked away, healed, and finally allowed life to begin again.